Hello. Welcome to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Best Horror Movies of All Time list. My name is Clay, and with me as always is Amanda. How you doing, Amanda?
I'm good, Clay, but we need to talk about something. We need to talk about the bonus situation.
You will get what you are contracted for.
I just think that I deserve an equal amount of shares.
Not my problem. Take it up with management. So I'll give you Wes's phone number.
Fine. Our own personal Weyland-Yutani Corp.
Yes. That they never say that name in this, do they?
No, it's only on the screens.
Is it on the screens?
Yes.
I wasn't specifically looking for it, but
when they boot up Mother, definitely.
Oh, it is. Okay. Yeah. Of course, we are talking about a little movie called Alien from 1979, number 5 on our list with a 98% Rotten Tomatoes score.
Damn
and
straight.
A 94% audience score. That might be the best, like the closest I've seen in a while. Even Rosemary's Baby was like 97 and like 86.
Yeah, I feel like that one's more people watch it and are sort of like polarized. A certain type of person is polarized by Rosemary's Baby.
Right.
Yes. Whereas
But
Alien
seems to be almost universal.
Yeah. Because it's that good.
I feel like I shouldn't even ask if you've seen this before.
You should not. I will be offended.
How about this? When was the first time that you saw Alien?
Oh, God. I think this is another one of those I definitely saw an edited version on television when I was too young to do so.
Yep.
And I did not understand what was happening, and I kind of have vague memories of my mom being a little bit like, should she be watching this? And my dad being like, she's fine.
The answer is always no, but also yes.
Yeah. So too young to remember is my answer to your question. What about yourself?
I actually don't remember. I know I'm almost positive I saw Aliens first because I had an older cousin who was really into aliens. And so I remember going to a sleepover with him at our grandmother's house, and we watched Aliens, and it freaked the fuck out of me.
Fair.
So I'm not totally sure. This is one, I know that I saw this fairly young because I've seen this probably, I don't know, I've seen it many times.
Yes.
And there are still things that I don't understand about it because my memory of them is that first viewing kid memory where I think about it and I'm like, what the fuck was going on there?
Yeah, this is one of those amazing movies that the first couple times you see it, I think even if you're an adult, you don't know what the fuck is going on in a bunch of different moments.
Yeah, I would like to point out.
Figure it out, but.
Psycho, which is number 1 on our list, 96.95.
Okay.
And Get Out, which is number 2, 98.86.
All right.
So,
Pretty
Alien's a little bit better than that. So, if you're going by presidential rules, it's just a little bit better. Yeah, there's certain things that are so oddly abstract about this movie that it's kind of. They kind of stick, like the two that stick in my mind, one of which we'll probably talk about longer than the other, is the opening scene when the computer boots up and it projects the computer screen onto the helmets.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw that being like, are the helmets talking to each other? It was so odd.
Right. Well, because your brain is trying to figure out, like, what am I looking at?
Right.
What is all of this stuff? What am I looking at? Is any of this important? What am I supposed to be paying attention to in this moment?
Right.
And it doesn't tell you. The movie, I mean. You have to just kind of figure out.
Yeah. And the other one was, which I still to this day don't really understand, is when Ash starts shoving a magazine down Ripley's throat, which I've never taught. Like, my brain started doing its own gymnastics when I was younger. And my original thought was that he was trying to, like, impregnate her with an alien
via magazine.
Yeah, like just pop it down the tube into her mouth kind of thing.
That's how women work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, in this universe.
In this universe, that's how all humans work.
Yes. But I've to this day, I've never, this is actually, I think the first movie we are covering that I have previously covered with Wes, but it was so long ago that we may as well not have done it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we probably talked about that scene at length on that podcast.
Yep.
Don't remember what was said. So
Can't wait.
yeah. Anyway, we are going to play the trailer, take a quick break, and then we will talk about Alien.
Some of you may have figured out we're not home yet. We're only halfway there. Mother's intercepted a transmission of unknown origin. You got us up to check it out.
Human.
Unknown. Alien life form.
Wait a minute, this movement.
What happened to Kane?
Something has attached itself to him. We have to get him to the infirmary right away. What the hell is that? Oh, we gotta get it off him.
Got a wonderful defense mechanism. You don't dare kill it.
There's gotta be a way of killing it.
You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Perfect organism.
Get out of the way!
Okay, Alien, directed by Ridley Scott, story by Dan O'Bannon, screenplay by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett. This is one of those, I think another one of those ones where, don't quote me on this. I know I've watched all the behind the scenes shit, and I have like at least one book about it, but I can't remember this stuff anymore.
Yep.
But I think this was another one kind of similar to Rosemary's Baby, where Dan O'Bannon had this script that he wrote that was like kind of trashy, but had like one really good scene, which is the chest burster scene. And it kind of, I think he wanted to direct it. And it got taken away from him and expanded out. Because if I remember correctly, like on all the special features and stuff, Dan O'Bannon is like very bitter about this.
Right, but they had to keep his name on there. Because
right. Well, he was involved with the production. Like
Yeah.
he worked, I mean, he wrote the screenplay. And he actually worked in the art department developing the monsters and stuff and some of the stuff. But I think like he had intended to direct this. And then when they got it, they were like, how about we give this to a real director?
Aww.
Sorry, Dan. Starring Sigourney Weaver, Tom Skerritt, John Hurt, Veronica Cartwright, Harry Dean Stanton, Ian Holm, Yaphet Kotto, and Bolaji Badejo as Papa Xenomorph himself. Does that make him a zaddy with an X?
I mean,
You're young. Am I using that correctly? Anyway,
A,
Amanda.
no. B, also no.
The answer is always no. Amanda, what happens in Alien?
In deep space, the crew of the commercial starship Nostromo is awakened from their cryosleep capsules halfway through their journey home to investigate a distress call coming from an alien vessel. The terror begins when the crew encounters a nest of eggs inside the alien ship. An organism from inside an egg leaps out and attaches itself to one of the crew, causing him to fall into a coma.
That's it.
That summary could have stopped a couple sentences before.
It's also
I probably should have just edited that part myself.
It's also funny because that's just the first half of the movie.
Yeah. They
Really?
could have stopped with commercial ship awoken from cryosleep to investigate a strange signal.
Yeah.
That could have stopped there.
Really burying the lead in that one.
Well, Clay, some things you'll find in Alien include extremely impractical underwear.
Yeah. I don't know much about ladies' underwear. or ladies' underwear from the late 70s.
Nope.
But that doesn't seem like
And
a
not-
style.
Definitely not ladies' underwear from 2021, 22.
Yeah. That does not seem like a style that was ever in vogue. Of like it looks like it was folded over a bunch of times to look smaller,
Yes.
which I assume it
Yes, or
was.
it shrank in the wash or something,
Yeah.
and she just didn't have another pair on the ship.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can't imagine the washing machine and dryer on the Nostromo are particularly good.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why there's all that water dripping from the ceiling. 'Cause
Well-
maybe
Clay,
yes.
you'll also find in this movie liquid of dubious provenance.
Yeah.
All over the place. All from like midpoint of the movie onwards.
Yeah.
Everything's just gooey and wet.
Yeah, apparently Ridley Scott got a lot of pushback from the producers on that scene, on that room that's just chains and water.
Yeah.
Because they were like, why are there chains and water in the middle of this spaceship? And Ridley Scott, much to his great credit, said, because I want there to be.
Yes.
And that's...
Correct answer.
he's wrong. He's rarely wrong when it comes to that stuff.
You'll also find xenomorph Tai Chi.
Yeah, my favorite shot in it's so strange because the xenomorph is such a ubiquitous creature now. It's like as well known as Dracula or Frankenstein or anything like that.
Right. Even the fact that we kind of all casually call it the xenomorph and everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I bet 9 out of 10 people couldn't tell you which movie that word shows up for the first time because it ain't this one.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
assuming
exactly.
it's probably the next one. That seems like a James Cameron thing.
Yeah.
But I honestly don't know.
Could be 3. Who knows?
Could be 3, yeah. What the hell are we talking about? There's something else I was going to say.
Tai Chi.
Tai Chi, yes. It is... It's funny to go back and watch this because clearly they're figuring out how the alien moves. And some of that gets kind of silly. Like there's a reason why they don't show a ton of it in this.
Right.
And it has my favorite shot, which is this just weird like torso up shot where the xenomorph is just kind of doing this weird like Tai Chi
like
move.
gracefully floating forward
Yeah.
to kill someone.
Walking towards Lambert to spear her through the chest.
You'll also find Kane's son.
Kane's son. His big dickhead son.
You know that I included that because it's an actual line Ash says.
Does he say that really?
Yeah. He refers to the creature as Kane's son
I
at
have
one point.
never caught that before.
This is why it helps to be hard of hearing. You have to put on the subtitles.
That's really interesting.
You'll also find a cosmic case of heartburn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the obviously the fun bit of trivia about that scene is that everybody else didn't exactly know what was going to happen.
Uh-huh.
And so all of the reactions you see are genuine.
Yes, it's the best. And last but certainly not least in my opinion, a cat named Jonesy.
Yeah. You know, he causes a lot of trouble. He gets a lot of people killed in this movie.
Good for him. Hashtag goals.
So, Alien. Is this a perfect movie?
It's close.
Yeah.
I think it's damn close.
Yeah. The thing that really stood out to me this time, not to jump right over all the substance of the film
Because
itself,
we would never do that.
is that like this movie's 2 hours. It's not a short movie.
Mm-hmm.
For the first hour, kind of nothing happens. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's like the only thing that really happens is they go down to the planet and the face hugger part.
Uh-huh.
But that all happens in like that happens at like minute 45 or something.
Right.
And it's just it feels like this movie should drag, but it does not drag at all.
I think it accomplishes that by doing the thing that we both love and talk about all the time, which is just dropping you into a world and not giving you a ton of context and background and just leaving you to figure it out. So there's enough in that first, half to third or whatever that your brain is sort of chewing on as you go. Mm-hmm. Who are these people? What are they doing? Why are they where they are?
Yep.
What is their relationship with each other? Why are they now taking the steps and doing the things that we're seeing happen? And I think it gives you enough to sort of you're disoriented enough to start with that you're so busy figuring all of those pieces out and trying to make sure you've got the map in your head of like who and what and where, then things start happening.
Yeah.
And you're still sort of unmoored. At least I always feel a little bit, now I've seen this movie a million times, so less so. But I always feel like that first 25, 30 minutes is very much like, wait a minute, okay, who are the factions here?
Right,
like,
yeah.
who's sort of friends with who? Why do these people seem to not like each other? Why are these people mad and these other people don't even care? Like, getting all of that kind of back under your belt and getting used to the atmosphere of the ship.
Yeah.
I feel like gives you a lot to do in the initial stretch.
Yeah, I almost I didn't know when I was going to be able to watch this week, and part of me was like, I've seen Alien a bunch. I could probably talk about this without seeing it, but I'm so glad that I did watch it because I don't think I've watched it since Wes and I talked about it, which was at least 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten how much it just kind of dumps you in. And I think one of the smartest things it does right away is, not only do you get this like very iconic title opening,
It's so good.
it gives you the on-screen like registration of what the Nostromo is, and then it shows you the ship, and then it basically goes through all of the rooms that you're going to see in the movie.
Yes.
Just to kind of give you a lay of the land a little bit.
Yeah.
Because once they wake up and things start going, you're kind of on your own.
Right. Or you sort of have to, you're tethered to a crew member.
Yeah.
You have to follow them where they go, but you don't get any. They never walk into a room and go, yes, this is the med bay.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Never.
Yes, this is the room where we keep the ship's computer. Like, there's no signage. There's no,
Right.
like, you're going to get the sort of orientation packet. It's just the crew has been woken up by the ship's computer because there is something they are required to do, and then we just are along for the ride.
Yeah, and even I was trying to decide how much of like trivia and behind the scenes stuff to get in. Honestly, I'm not going to do a lot of that because plenty of people have done it better than me.
Well, and that's a whole episode of a podcast.
Yeah,
in
you
and
could
of
do
itself.
the whole episode just talking about the stuff and
the sort of ephemera around it. Yeah.
But one of the things that I can't remember if this is what they did, but it definitely feels this way. It feels like they rehearsed a lot because their interactions, the crew are so good.
Yeah.
That their interactions all feel almost like improv.
Yes.
There's one scene after Dallas gets killed where Ripley is trying to figure out what to do, and as she's kind of coming up with her plan, Parker's in the background just like talking almost inaudibly to her, and she's like, will you shut the fuck up?
Yeah.
Which that feels very much like it was an improv, like
Yes.
it was not in the script.
Yeah, that he's just angry and upset, and he's... Yeah, it has that... It does the same sort of thing that Jaws does, actually, where people talk like they do in real life when they're in a room full of other people, which is, you know, if you're in a room with 6 other people and you're all sort of doing separate things or having your own conversations, you don't fall into a perfect pattern of like only one person is ever talking at the same time.
Right.
You talk over each other.
Yeah.
You anticipate people's responses, you interject. Like, that's what normal conversation sounds like, and it makes these people on this ship feel so real.
Yeah, especially that first scene when they're all eating.
Yes, when they're having breakfast.
And, yeah, Parker and Brett are this might be the only movie where I know everybody's character name, by the way. Parker and Brett are
So proud
kind
of
of
you.
having their own
Oh
conversation.
no, am I going to be out of a job?
Only if we just cover this one movie. Which we could do one of those. Probably we should do like the Alien 1 second Alien, where every episode we talk about a single second from the movie Alien.
You could absolutely do that with this movie.
But Parker and Brett are having their own kind of conversation about the bonus thing, and while Dallas is shooting the shit with Lambert and Kane and stuff, and Ripley's just alone and mad or whatever. But They just do such a great job of making these characters feel lived in.
Yes.
And I know Ridley Scott did say that he was like, he knew that he was going to be spending all of his time on the visuals, and so he needed to cast people that he knew he could just count on to deliver.
Yeah.
And man, he fucking nailed it. Like,
Seriously,
these guys are. It's a really interesting cast because it's all character actors. I mean, you don't think about that now because obviously Sigourney Weaver is a huge star,
right?
And I mean, Tom Skerritt is a star,
right?
He's probably at this point the most well-known guy. Well, I mean, Yaphet Kotto's, but anyway, they're all like, it's not like,
but none of them are.
Robert Redford's not in the movie.
Exactly,
you know?
Exactly. Yes, yeah, and it's so fascinating that it's like he chose these people who are all, I think, high quality actors first and foremost, and then famous actors second.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not a vehicle for any one of them specifically,
right?
Especially in the first 5/6 of the movie, it's very much an ensemble.
Yeah,
thing.
It's one of those movies that much like Evil Dead. I think the franchise has kind of dulled this effect down a bit, but when this came out, I don't think you know who the hero of the movie is.
No, I don't think you do.
Because this was, I believe this was Sigourney Weaver's first movie, or maybe like her second movie.
Jesus.
And so, like, you're not going into this thinking Sigourney Weaver is going to be the last person standing.
Right.
You know, they don't even, it's not even like Halloween focuses you in on Laurie Strode.
Right.
This does not focus you on Ripley until Dallas gets killed.
It's more like Friday the 13th in that way.
Yeah.
Where there's kind of a group of people and they're all they all have their sort of little moments and vignettes and like they pair off and have their relationships with each other. And it's not until much later in the movie that you realize, oh, it's this girl.
Right.
She's the one who might make it. Everyone else is fucked.
Yeah. It's, I guess, Ridley Scott said his I said I wasn't going to do trivia, but here we are. Ridley Scott said the three inspirations for this movie were 2001: A Space Odyssey, Star Wars, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Nice.
Which I do want to talk about those first
what a
two
trinity.
movies. I know, right? Every movie should have those as their influences. But it has that Texas Chainsaw feel where when you I think if you go back, Texas Chainsaw doesn't feel like it's any one person's movie until it becomes one person's movie.
Right, exactly. And I love that because it doesn't. What it does, if you want your movie to sort of have that feeling and you want to do it well, it forces you to make each of the characters a real character.
Yep.
Because you need them all to be equally believable and you need the audience to be able to sort of shift focus from one to the other and kind of get behind any of them when you need them to. Whereas I think when you kind of start off and it's an ensemble movie, but there's like one or maybe two obvious leads, the other characters always suffer for it.
Yeah.
That's how I see it, at least.
One of the things we talk about on the Star Trek podcast a lot, that is one of the reasons why later iterations of Star Trek fail in our eyes, is that if you look at Star Trek: The Next Generation, even if the stories aren't the best story, all of the characters, immediately what their take on a certain situation is going to be. And it does a lot of heavy lifting and makes the situation that much more interesting and open to conflict and drama. Because if you know that going into this situation, Picard is going to be rational, Worf is going to be more aggressive.
Let's fucking blow him up.
Yeah, and the Doctor is going to be more cautious. Like you know how these people are going to kind of. They each have a point of view,
right?
And I think they do a nice. You don't spend a ton of time with these characters, but you do figure out kind of what their point of views are.
Yes,
because Ripley is very clearly the rational and is
by the book is the only person who's looking at the situation rationally.
Ash is he's a lot more. I had it written down here. Ash is I mean, obviously he's a robot, but he's smart. He knows how to manipulate people,
Right.
and he appeals to their wallets because the thing that gets them to go down, he's like, well, if you don't go down, it says in the contract that you don't get paid.
Yeah.
You know, and he knows that that's what Parker's after.
Right.
You know, Parker and Brett. Well, Brett's kind of like just going along for the ride.
Right.
But Parker is very money
Right.
minded. Exactly. Yes. Did you ever say anything other than right?
Right.
And Dallas is the most interesting to me because Dallas is like, he's the de facto leader because he's the captain,
Yeah.
but he's very much like, I don't want to call him a company man, but he's the kind of guy who says, that's not my department.
Yes.
You know, and like that's so interesting for a character like him that should be the hero type.
Yeah.
And he's just kind of like annoyed that he has to do this shit.
Yeah, he's so over it. Like right away he's like, can we just get through this and go home?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be doing this anymore. I want to finish this job and get home.
Yeah.
But one thing I love is that you can, at any time, especially in the beginning of this movie, multiple characters are on screen with one another. You can pause it and look at them and read their body language and learn so much about who these people are to one another. Like how Brett and Parker are always kind of like, they're right next to each other. They are always sort of in tune. They are clearly like, we are a united front. Dallas seems like he kind of just wants to he wants to get the job done, but he also sort of just wants to hang out.
Yeah.
Like he and Kane are always sort of swarming things together before Kane gets face-huggered. The tension between Lambert and Ripley right away.
Yep.
Like it's clear they do not like each other. And then the fact that Ash is so distant from everyone.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have... I feel like Ash and Ripley are two versions of a very similar character in a weird way at the beginning.
Sure. Yeah.
Where they are both sort of much more focused on their jobs. They want to do things and they want to do them right. They don't really have an interest in the sort of interpersonal jokey stuff. They're kind of aloof, both of them.
Yep.
The difference being that Ripley wants to do things by the book because she thinks that's the best way to do them. And Ash has secret ulterior motives.
Agenda,
But it's so interesting. Like I even love, there's a moment, there's the scene after Kane has magically gotten better. And they're sitting around having dinner, the Last Supper. Everyone is crowded on one end of the table around him. And he's very animated and everyone's so like palpably relieved. And they're all kind of clustered on one side of the table. And then on the other side, it's Ripley in one corner and Ash in the other.
Sure, yeah.
And they're sort of looking out on it. And Ripley is kind of on the outside. Greg and I had different interpretations about this. I argued it was because the group was sort of ostracizing her a little bit because she was going to leave everybody locked out of the ship to die. And like, look, now everything's fine, you cold-hearted bitch. That was my argument. Greg's argument was he thinks she's suspected something is still not right.
I think it's actually two sides of the same argument from different point of views. I think they're both thinking, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think Ripley is thinking it like the more catastrophic way where it's like these people, they don't know anything could happen.
Right. He could be infected with the disease.
Right.
He could have parasites.
And Ash is thinking,
yes.
I don't know what's going to happen,
but
I want to see what it is.
I just can't wait.
Yeah. It's one of, Ash is a really great character because I think they hide his deception very well.
Yes, and I think Ripley's character helps do that.
Yeah, because everything that he says and does is quote unquote reasonable.
Yep.
He, like I said, he appeals to them on a contract level where it's like, we got to do this. This is what they told us we got to do. And even when he lets them in, when they're coming back, he's siding with the more human people.
Right. A, it's a direct order from the captain to let them in, and B, it looks on the surface more compassionate than Ripley.
He also is apparently programmed to be a misogynist because I don't mean literally, but I just like the thing I noticed this time is that Ash is very dismissive of Ripley as a commander. Anytime, like, he very rarely talks to her.
Yes.
And there's scenes where it'll be him, Ripley, and Dallas.
Yep.
Ripley will say something, and Ash will direct his response to Dallas.
Yes.
Like, he's very dismissive of her.
I saw that too. I did not read it as dismissive. I read it as he sees her as a threat.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think he sees anyone else on that ship as a threat to his mission.
Yeah, I can see that.
think he only sees her as a potential because she asks too many questions. She's much more observant than a lot of her crewmates. After they've gotten Kane back on the ship and he is still an face huggered. When Ash is in the lab, sort of running experiments, Ripley comes in and presses him on what he's doing.
Right.
And we never really see Dallas do that. Like, Dallas will be like, well, what can you do? Can you cut the damn thing off? Come on. Like, let's get rid of this. But he's not saying, why are you doing this?
Right.
What is this supposed to do? Why can't we X? What is the plan for Y? Also, why did you let them back on the ship? You know I was in charge.
Yeah.
Like, she does not let him off the hook.
Yeah.
She's dogged in a way the others aren't about things.
Yeah, I agree with all that. But I also think that, like, every time she does that, his response has that kind of like, women.
Oh, yeah.
Women, am I right?
Oh,
that
totally.
kind of vibe. But, you know, it's
Yeah.
I do 100% agree with you. I think, he is she is the biggest threat to him.
Yes.
I think as far as the characters go, well, it's funny you bring up The Last Supper, actually, because John Hurt plays Jesus in Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1. But I feel like, and I mean, kind of rightfully so because he doesn't have much to do, but Kane definitely is the least fleshed out.
Yes.
He doesn't really have much of a personality.
Yeah.
Lambert, I would say Lambert is number 2, lowest on the rung because her personality just seems to be terrified.
Yeah.
Terrified and pissed off at Ripley. But I think Kane is very much expendable. I mean, he obviously serves his purpose.
Absolutely. I think he has a very clear purpose in the story of what he is there to do. And when you put your character in a coma for most of the first act of the first or second act of the movie, it's hard to be like, here's his personality.
Yeah.
No, his personality right now is getting almost killed and then fully killed.
I can tell you, actually, I don't remember when the first time I saw Alien was, but I do know that before I saw Alien, I saw John Hurt have an alien burst out of his chest at the end of Spaceballs.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely saw that scene before I saw the movie.
Yeah.
Like somewhere, just best of lists, something. Yeah. It's so good though.
The design of this movie is top notch. There's, I believe the story goes, Alejandro Jodorowsky was set to make Dune, and if you're interested in that, check out Jodorowsky's Dune, which is a documentary all about this failed Dune production, which I highly recommend. And what Jodorowsky had done was he had brought in this fucking murderer's row of designers, including Ron Cobb, H.R. Giger, and Mobius. And so when Dune fell apart, Ridley Scott basically just scooped up the whole design team from Dune and brought them over to Alien. And it's one of those things where, like, Jodorowsky's Dune probably would have been narratively unwatchable, too expensive to actually have been made, and probably just, like, overall kind of like a weird mess.
Yep.
But
would have been great to look at.
Oh, absolutely. No, I want to see it.
Yeah.
I want to see it. But seeing what the creative team actually did with Alien makes me really sad that he never got to make that movie.
Yeah.
You see, there's actually some of the designs from some of the Giger designs from Dune have shown up in other stuff. One of the Species movies, I think, there's a train, like a Giger train, that is a reused design from Dune. And in Prometheus, I think they reuse some of the Harkonnen stuff that he designed.
Sure.
But Ron Cobb designed most of the machines. Giger obviously designed the monsters and the alien stuff. And Mobius, I think, mostly did suits. Like the space suits are very Mobius. If you want to see Mobius let loose, watch The Fifth Element. Because even though that's... can't remember. I think maybe they were ripping him off in that. Anyway, the Fifth Element is very much a Mobius influenced movie if he didn't work on it specifically. But yeah, it's a design team who created something that I was thinking about this today as I was watching it. You know, you have 2001: A Space Odyssey changes the game as far as sci-fi movies go. Then you have Star Wars, changes the game as far as sci-fi movies go. Then you have Alien, which builds off those last two, changes the game as far as sci-fi movies go. I don't know if sci-fi, specifically like space sci-fi, has yet to evolve past Alien, because I feel like everything.
Interesting.
I mean, there have been people who have done different stuff, but there has been no sci-fi movie that I can think of that just changed the way people thought about design of movies the way that Alien has. And I would throw, if you're talking general sci-fi, Blade Runner as well. I think Blade Runner and Alien, people are just have not figured out how to do better than that. Yeah. Which makes me feel like Ridley Scott is probably the most influential genre filmmaker of the past 45 years or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's a reasonable argument to make. And it is interesting now that you bring it up. I hadn't really thought about it, but especially like space related sci-fi, we don't have many. I feel like there were a lot of movies that maybe didn't do so great, that in some design aspects maybe tried to swing for the fences in a different direction and just missed. Yeah. I think part of what makes this movie so influential is even though it's drawing from all these different inspirations, it is doing something different.
Sure, yeah.
Forgive me, it's been a long time since I've seen 2001. But if I remember correctly, the spaceships in that movie are pretty clean. They're pretty modern.
Yeah, very
modern of that era.
What's the word? Sterile.
Yes, yes, they're very sterile. Everything is kind of straight lines. And Star Wars is different in the sense that stuff looks used.
Yeah, Star Wars is very dirty.
Yeah.
It's the first science fiction movie that really posits a future, quote unquote future.
Yes.
That is grimy.
Yes.
Most science fiction movies are usually like the future, everything shines.
Right. But in Alien, you're getting a ship that feels like an oil rig.
Oh yeah.
It feels like you work inside a hydroelectric plant. Like it just feels like you work somewhere industrial. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily even feel like space all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not that many space shots in this movie, frankly.
There aren't. And there are certain parts of the ship that I think it draws an interesting class distinction between the crew members, where Parker and Brett are down in the guts of the ship. Yep. And everyone else is sort of in the crew quarters or on the deck, or in the room with Mother, the computer. Those things all look somewhat closer to the shiny modern ships.
Mother has a very classic sci-fi feel.
Yes.
Like in any other movie, that thing would look tacky as hell.
Yes.
But for some reason it works.
But there are those parts of the ship that sort of do look more in that direction. But then there's so much of this huge ass ship that is essentially just elaborate plumbing systems. It feels like
a lot of pipes.
Yeah, it feels almost like you're in a sewer.
Yes.
For a lot of it, which is a really fascinating thing, because I think it takes sci-fi and in a very subtle way of not beating you over the head with any sort of like, this movie is not a communist manifesto, but it does insert this sort of like blue collar aspect to it, where these people are just doing their jobs.
Yeah.
This is not special to them. This is not some fancy transport. This is not, we are striking out to do science for the world. This is like, no, we're hauling freight.
Yeah.
This is essentially a big rig truck.
Yeah. It's also funny because I think it's that element is completely believable. Mm-hmm. But I just can't help but find it funny because, again, we're talking about a lot of Star Trek, and in the show Star Trek Enterprise, which features the smallest version of the ship, the Enterprise, the crew on that ship is 85 people. And if you look at the size of the Nostromo, there's 6 people on the ship flying this into massive thing where it's like, I mean, think about an oil rig. There's probably 50 people on an oil rig. Yeah. I know nothing about oil rigs, but I'm going to assume it's at least the crew complement of Armageddon works on an oil rig. So that's like 10 guys at least.
But I think, that's what makes this so interesting, because it's like, at this point, the computer does most of the work.
Right, yeah.
They are in hypersleep for the majority, or cryosleep, or whatever it's called in this. They're in essentially a medically induced coma for most of the travel here. Yeah. They're sort of just on it for the ends. Yeah.
And I think it's just so well done and so well constructed and so believable that, like, again, this ship is absolutely like when they blow it up, it's like a sun explodes.
Yes.
But you only see 5 rooms on this ship, basically.
Yeah, and a bunch of hallways.
And anytime Parker and Brett have to fix something, it's just like a pipe with steam coming out of it in the same room, and you never question.
Or is it the same room?
Right. Well, I mean, like they built one set with a bunch of pipes.
Yeah, but could argue that, like, this is just the standard hallway for these ships. They duplicate it 800 times to make all the hallways in the ship.
Right. Yeah.
Which I love, because I think that is how it would be done. Is these ships that are meant for this sort of like the mundane type of trade that's happening here is not. A company like Weyland-Yutani is not going to be spending money to make it unique or pretty or luxurious. It's going to be purely functional.
The thing that always impressed me about the Nostromo, and I think is the big step forward design-wise, is that it's a spaceship that doesn't look like a spaceship.
Yeah.
Like you're right. It looks like an oil rig.
Yeah.
Like it does not. Spaceships are traditionally look aerodynamic.
Yes.
And every time I watch this movie, the only thing I can think is, did they build this thing in space? Because there's no way you like lift this off from Earth.
Right.
Like this is not built to fly in any sort of atmosphere.
Well, and I'm always thinking like it's hauling freight. So like what parts of what we're seeing are freight?
Sure.
And what parts are the ship?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Like, it's so fascinating.
So, there's an element of that which I find is similar to John Carpenter's The Thing, where I've watched this movie a million times. I have no fucking clue what they're hauling. Yeah. Like, I think they say it once. I think it maybe says it in that, like, opening thing, but it's like, it means nothing.
Minerals and whatever.
What are they doing in Antarctica? I don't know.
Who knows?
Doesn't matter.
But I do think that's something that's so amazing, because it's you've taken these people who designed this elaborate, detailed set, and it all fits together and merges together in such a way that you feel like you believe it. Mm-hmm. Even though everything we're saying makes it obvious how like kind of fantastical this whole thing is.
Right.
But you don't question it when you're watching it, because there's so much detail put into it, and it looks like a place where people live and work.
Yep.
Like, one of the details I love is in the sort of crew quarters for when you're awake, when you're not in
Yeah.
cryosleep around the table where they all eat. They have their own sort of little bays of like beds.
Right, yeah.
And the one that Ripley gets a magazine shoved in her mouth in, there's cutouts of like nudie mag pictures on the wall. And it's like, yeah, it's just some working dude. This is where he crashes when he needs a nap after his shift. And he just put like pinups on the wall. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a great design. And it go, it's one of those things kind of like, again, like John Carpenter's The Thing, where this thing is so intricately designed and constructed, but you see like a quarter of it because it's so dim.
Yeah.
And it's so very specifically lit.
Which I also love.
Yeah, I mean, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
It's impeccably shot. I mean, Ridley Scott is just a brilliant visual artist. Every big scene in this movie is like an all-timer. The egg sequence, all-timer, the chest burster, it's just...
I mean, even when they walk into the traveler's ship and see the space jockey, like, I love that. That when they see that gigantic alien sitting in what was the pilot's seat for the ship, that thing is so fucking cool looking, and I don't know. I just it's such an indelible image. It's like sticks with you.
It's so like one of my biggest pet peeves with a lot of modern sci-fi and horror stuff is it feels like everybody is pulling from everybody else when it comes to design, and you very rarely see something that feels truly original.
Yeah. And
the Giger stuff in this is unlike anything anyone has ever seen.
Yeah.
The space jockey, I didn't even really know what that thing was.
Yeah.
For basically till like Prometheus came out. They're like, no, it's a guy. I'm like, all right, sure.
Well, I remember watching this movie at one point when I was in like college and having the realization that it was a guy.
Yeah.
Like realizing it wasn't just some big weird statue or monument or something. I was like, oh shit, wait a minute. That was supposed to have been a guy.
Yeah.
Like they don't spoon feed anything to you in this. It's like you have to pay attention and sort of work for it a little bit.
Yeah. My one of my favorite bits of filmmaking is how they use video to their advantage, because everybody's got like a video camera hooked to their helmet.
Yeah.
And they have this great bit as they're approaching the space Hulk. I think that's what they call it. I don't know. The ship. And they cut to the video feed.
Yeah.
And it almost turns into like a found footage movie.
Yeah.
Because you see them kind of like shakily coming through the rocks, and it's all breaking up and stuff, and so you're kind of trying to figure out what you're looking at, and it's so effective. It's such a great way to introduce this completely foreign thing.
Yeah.
And it's a movie about aliens where that word actually feels like it has weight, because the stuff that you're seeing is totally alien.
Yes. Yeah, that was this is very much a tangent, but that was one of my pet peeves about the most recent Doctor Strange movie was when they kind of fall through the multiverse at one point. And I saw that movie when it came out, so it's been a while. Maybe I'm being unfair at this point. But I remember kind of like it felt like all the worlds they emphasized were very similar to ours with like one or two differences.
Well, there was that one where everybody was paint.
Okay. There was that one. But I don't know. Some of that stuff always like when people kind of dip into that, it a lot of times in more modern stuff, it does feel like a little bit of a missed opportunity to try and do something really weird or different. Yeah. And you sort of just get like, it's weird. It's not like our world. Everybody wears hats.
Everything's corn.
Yeah. Everything's corn. Get back in the ship, Morty. But yeah, I mean, visually it's just such a fascinating movie to watch for what you see and for what you don't see.
Yeah.
The way things are obscured, the way the alien, the xenomorph itself it evolves to the ship.
Yeah.
Like, it evolves to exist in the Nostromo.
Right.
So it blends into things in the Nostromo. Like, when the xenomorph is stowing away on the escape pod and she doesn't realize it's there, it's one of my favorite sequences.
Yeah, it looks just like the ship.
Yes.
And it blends right in.
You don't know it's there either until an arm comes
Yeah.
out.
I guess, not to another piece of trivia, but I guess they built that set around the costume.
Oh, cool.
So it would be as seamless
Yeah,
as
yeah.
possible. And then after they did that, he couldn't get out. So.
No. Gosh, I don't think I've ever thought about how hard the job of playing the xenomorph must have been.
Yeah, it's one of those things too where it's like, this is I think they do a really good job of hiding the fact that this is just a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
it's
there's
just
like one or two scenes where they kind of, it's like,
Yeah, but this is just a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
It's like if you look at the actual costume,
Mm-hmm.
all that design aside, that most of that design is the head and like
Yeah.
the back.
Yeah.
Because you get that big
Like
arcing
spiny
head
back.
and those like exhaust ports that come out of his
Yes.
back, and
Yeah.
that's like what your silhouette is.
Mhm.
And of course the face and everything. But like
Right.
from the neck down, it's just a guy in a suit. And so they do a great job of focusing on the head and the back
Right.
and the hand, the really long fingers and the mouth
Yes.
and stuff. And
Yeah.
they get the tail in there too.
I read something that described the xenomorph's face as it said it was a horror for everyone because
Okay.
it's the first mouth opens up to reveal the second, like, proboscis mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and they said it's essentially like a phallus with the vagina dentata at the end.
Yep, that's old HR for you.
Yeah, let's just get really into the Freudian stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the first time you see the full-grown xenomorph when it kills Brett, it is so fucking scary.
Yeah. There's actually in the director's cut, there's a scene they add, or a shot they add into that scene, where when he's looking up and the water's dripping down on him, they show a quick shot of the alien hanging in the chains. And it's another one where it's like, if you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
But it's such a cool shot. I'm
Yeah.
disappointed they cut it out of theatrical version.
Yeah. And I do love, because I feel like those, you summed it up perfectly. Like, if you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know what you're looking at.
Right, yeah.
And I love those moments because I think it fits in with the very first intro to the ship at the very beginning of the movie, where nobody is awake yet and you're just sort of moving through these rooms, because it's that same feeling. Like, you don't know what you're looking at. So you're like, what is all this? And then
Yeah.
it's not until later on in the movie that you understand, like, this is what Mother is and this is why it's important. This is the science bay. This is the ship's controls. This is where Ripley's going to have to go to try and self-destruct the ship.
Yep.
Like, you don't know what any of these things are when you first see them. And so they don't make sense to you.
Right.
Until you've gotten more of the context later on down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of jumping back to the Friday the 13th or Texas Chainsaw comparisons, I think this is a really, if you look at this as a slasher movie, I think it's really effectively paced in a
Yeah.
way that is kind of different than slasher movies usually are, because it's got this really long, drawn out, as we said, introduction, right?
Yeah.
If it's like
It's like a very long bulbous head.
yeah, yes. It's exactly an hour when the chest burster happens.
Oh, wow.
Or it's between 50 and 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And so it's exactly the halfway point.
Yeah.
And from that point on, you get one kill where they get rid of Brett. The one thing that I do feel is strange about this, and it feels like it must have just been a cut scene, and I'd have to go back and check the director's cut and see if they changed this.
Yeah.
But after they kill Brett, they directly cut to Parker and Ripley talking
Yeah.
about having seen the thing that killed him.
Yes.
And I was like, what? They didn't see anything. Like,
yeah,
they weren't there for
it is
that.
it is a weird moment. There's probably
Yeah.
a deleted scene
There's gotta
right in
be.
there of them running in right as
Yeah.
it climbs back up the chains into the ceiling.
Yeah.
But you're right. I remember being a little confused by that too.
Yeah. But they go from there, they kill one guy, and then they don't do the slasher movie thing where everybody gets picked off one by one.
Right.
They do Brett. Then everybody kind of like comes up with a plan.
Yep.
They kill Dallas.
Yep.
And then they kill.
And everybody kind of, they're not directly witnessing it, but everybody is on the comms with him when
Right.
it happens. It's not like they don't do the dumb thing and all immediately split up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And killing Dallas, quote unquote, first, I guess, or second, is really smart because seems like he's the guy in charge.
Yes.
Take him off the board, causes chaos without the other characters. And then the Ash scene happens pretty quickly after that. And then right after that, essentially, they kill Parker and Lambert at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you go from a full team down to just Ripley very quickly.
Yeah, and none of them are killed by doing the I'm going to storm off and go it alone thing.
Right. Well, no, yeah, you're right. There's a moment where Parker storms off.
Parker he sort of storms off, but he doesn't. You know,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Nobody is like, screw this. You all take your chances. I'm going for the escape pod. You either come with me or you don't. And then that person charges off on their own and immediately gets killed, which would be the stereotypical slasher movie thing.
Yeah, I did also notice this time that Parker's shirt seems to mysteriously rip and get turned into like an action hero shirt in a way that made me feel like Yaphet Kotto was like, "Can I like look really cool?" And Ridley Scott's like, "Yeah, whatever."
I'm gonna tie a bandana around my head.
And then he
cut
turns
my
around and
sleeves
like,
off.
"We don't have lights on him. Nobody's gonna notice." But if he feels great about it, that's cool. But you know, like it's
like
so,
it would be a very Parker thing to do. So
Yeah.
it's in character. We'll let him have this.
So you know, you've got the chest burster happens at an hour.
Yeah.
This is just about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And Ripley is on her own. They start the self-destruction sequence with a half an hour left.
Wow. So in 30
so
minutes.
in 30 minutes they kill everybody.
Everyone else is off the board. That's great.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel rushed at all. You know, it feels a lot more natural than a lot of slasher movies do. Because slasher movies end up turning into this stupid formula where it's like, all right, we got one guy. Yeah. Now we gotta wait. Then we gotta get the next guy.
Yep.
All right. Now we gotta wait. Now, so that's why I appreciate it in The Burning when he pops up in that canoe and kills 5 people at the same time.
Just murders a bunch of people. I mean, I also appreciated in this movie that the only times people when people do separate after they're aware the xenomorph is on the ship and it is dangerous, the only times they separate are for very specific reasons, and the reasons make sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I have to go refuel these flamethrowers.
To be fair, the one that stems apart and that does very much feel like a slasher movie thing is when they find Jonesy, and then Parker's like, "Go get the cat," and he's like, "Okay," and then he walks off by himself.
But to be fair, isn't that before they know that the xenomorph has become a gigantic killing machine?
Yes,
they
is.
think it's still this little cat-sized thing that might be dangerous, but you know, Brett can probably handle it. He's got a flamethrower or a cattle prod. But yeah, I mean, even when they do split up, it's sort of agreed upon. There's a plan. It's Ripley saying to Parker and Lambert, "Go get as much coolant as you can carry. I'm going to get the pod ready. We'll meet back here." And like, they have to split up because they're running out of time. Like, they got to get out of there. So I appreciate that, because at no point, well, not at no point, but like generally the people in this movie are reasonably smart.
Yeah, I would say
like
so.
People aren't making this sort of same willy-nilly, like, I'm just going to get mad at you and storm off. Or like, I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go hide under my bed. It's like, no, they still, even Lambert, who is like obviously the one who's having the most trouble emotionally with what's going on, when she dies, she's with Parker and they are loading up coolant and oxygen tanks for the escape pod.
I feel like Parker could have done more to help her. He seems.
Oh
kinda,
yeah,
you know.
I think I'm saying, like, she didn't just shut down. She didn't go say, "I'm not leaving this room. You can't make me." She was like, "All right, fine. If this is what I have to do to get out of here, this is what I'm gonna do."
I don't remember seeing it. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. This version has the scene where she slaps Ripley, right?
Oh, I don't think it does.
No,
the original 1979.
I think it's during when Kane is in the med bay.
Oh, maybe.
And they're all kind of standing outside watching.
I do remember that scene. I can't remember if it was in the version I watched
can't remember.
to record this. Because I watched the original, the theatrical release.
That's what I watched as well.
Yeah. I feel like it's not, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting. My favorite thing about the director's cut of this movie is that, unlike most director's cut, it's actually a minute shorter than the original version.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I feel like there's only a few people whose director's cuts are legitimate, and Ridley Scott is pretty much at the top of the list. Most people, that it's like director's cut, it's like, well, we put in all the shit we cut out, and it doesn't.
Right,
it doesn't
we
make
added
the movie
back
any better.
in 4 deleted scenes that we didn't really need.
Yeah, I feel like Ridley Scott usually actually literally goes in and recutts the movie. There's the most famous. I don't know if I'd say it's the most famous one. Obviously, Blade Runner is a very famous one, but I guess Kingdom of Heaven.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
It's Kingdom of Heaven. It's a Crusades era movie with Orlando Bloom from the early 2000s.
Oh, okay.
It's fine. it's fine.
Sure.
But I have heard that the director's cut of that is awesome.
Oh.
And I've never seen it, and I need to because I do really like Ridley Scott. Michael Mann also, his director's cuts usually are aggressive.
It's the right word for him.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about Ash.
Yes.
Before we need to wrap things up, because
sure,
we're gonna go a little long.
We talked about like the burning for like an hour and 40 minutes. So
I know.
I think we could talk about Alien for as long as we want.
Well, I there are a couple things that Ash does, and then the sort of climactic Ash scene that I want to talk about. And I find these things so interesting because I think you can come up with reasons for why he does the little quirky, weird things he does. But I'm not sure if there are like canonical reasons or if it's just like, who knows? Figure it out. But when they're getting ready for the sort of away team mission to the asteroid mining planet, whatever they're on, where they find all the eggs.
LV-426.
Thank you.
Yep.
He's getting ready, and he sort of does this little jog in place.
Right. Yeah.
This sort of weird little like run in place. Do you know what that's about?
I don't. No.
It's just him.
I have.
It's just him getting hyped up.
Yeah.
Real excited to get his own xenomorph.
Excuse me. I remember, I don't know if it was my interpretation or if it was one I had read somewhere, was that Ash is actively like broken. And so that's him like testing his robot.
Like resetting some stuff.
I think that's one of those things where it's like the first time I saw it, I must have like thought, oh, that must be it because of the way that he freaks out later. But I don't think I ever really noticed it until this time when I was watching it and he starts bleeding the white goop down his head.
Yes.
And Caitlin said, well, that's Ripley's own fault because she pushed him and broke him. And I was like, I never thought about that but I said, oh, she doesn't know he's a robot at this point. She's like, oh, I didn't realize. But she's not wrong.
Right.
Like she does push him and he kind of falls into the wall and then he starts bleeding.
But at the same time, he doesn't strike me as that fragile.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really interesting because then this leads me perfectly into that sequence where Dallas is dead. Kane is obviously dead. So now Ripley is commanding officer and she gets access to the ship's computer mother. And she goes in and she discovers, Order 937? And it is to retrieve a sample from LV-426. Thank you.
Come on, get with it, huh?
Look, I'm off this time. You're handling all the names.
It's a national holiday, Amanda. April 26th. It's Alien Day, recognized nationwide.
I am on vacation on national holidays. But we find out that the order is to retrieve this sample and get it back to Earth, and the crew is expendable. And Ash has gotten into the computer with her, and they have an altercation, and then he locks her into the crew quarters and attacks her. In that sequence, why does he start kind of falling apart?
I have no idea. I like I said, I didn't think about it until now that it was she damaged him somehow.
Yeah.
But I don't know because previously I think I had thought, oh, he was always kind of damaged or something, which is why he freaks it. But yeah, I'm not sure.
I have a little bit of a theory. I don't know how true this is, but aren't these androids supposed to be Blade Runner style, not able to hurt humans?
I mean, now I guess, sure. But they don't ever. I don't think they ever specifically say that.
Yeah,
they definitely don't in this movie because you don't even know robots exist until a robot exists.
Right, that like androids are a thing until here is one. Okay, so this might just be my own pet theory, shot in the dark kind of thing. But I wonder if some of it could be that he needs to stop Ripley because he needs to finish his mission, but it is against his sort of prime directives to hurt humans.
Sure.
So maybe the dissonance inside of his programming on like, I've got to stop her, so that means I got to kill her. Also, I kind of hate her, so I'm going to kill her, is...
Also, I think she needs to read more, and I've forgotten that humans read with their eyes, not their mouths.
Not their mouths. Jam it in there. But yeah, just like, I don't know, I was kind of thinking maybe it's a thing where it's like he's not supposed to be attacking her, and so he is like damaging himself by taking these actions.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
I think it's as valid as anything else.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was like a very clear canonical, like,
not
no,
that I
it's
know
this
of.
and this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that scene with the magazine,
it's so creepy.
I feel like it might be
weird.
Yeah, it might be something as simple as there is so much sexual violence imagery and undertones in this movie that it's kind of just another one of those.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it is. I don't think that like Kane's intent is in any way sexual.
Yeah.
But it feels gross. Like rolling this magazine
into
you mean
like
Ash. I'm sorry, yeah. What did I say, Kane?
Yeah.
Yeah. Rolling this magazine into a tube and then shoving it in her mouth.
Yeah.
It feels obviously invasive and,
right.
Like a violation.
I wonder if there's a little bit of a sort of like he's sort of emulating the xenomorph that he admires so much.
Yeah, that's why I always thought he was like trying to implant an egg in like an alien in her or something.
Well, I don't think he's like actively trying to do that.
No, I don't think so. But
I think there might be an element of like, I admire this creature so much. If this is the way it kills, maybe.
I think my headcanon before was that, I don't know why it came up. This is these like stupid ways that your child brain extrapolates.
Yeah, when you're 9 years old and you're just putting things together.
I think that I thought he had an alien in him that he was trying to put into
give to her.
Yeah. But it does, I mean, as Prometheus and Alien Covenant get into a bit, like there is a lot of stuff in that about the robots in that movie having this sort of feeling of impotence as far as creation and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, maybe it is something that Ridley Scott's been thinking about for 40 years. I don't know, but
yeah, I could totally see that because I do think I actually I know it starts silly, but the scene where they talk to Ash after decapitating him, and they kind of
the most seamless fake head to real head cut in
perfect
movie
prop
history
ever.
I actually, you know what? I think in the director's cut, I think that cut's better. I think that transition is better. But anyway,
probably couldn't be much worse.
Yeah.
But I love the conversation they have with him, with Ash when he's just a head on a table. And he's talking about it, and he says he's talking about the xenomorph, and I think it's Lambert says you admire it, and I love that because it's like it's such a subtle comment, but it gives you so much information that you now know about Ash.
Right.
Like you get to like kind of finally see his character in that moment.
Yeah, and he admires it the way a robot would admire something.
Yes, for its efficiency.
Efficiency and simplicity.
Yes.
And,
its purity, I think he says.
Yeah. My favorite thing about that scene, the goofiness of it, is that when they cut back to the fake head, it's a fake head with a stupid grin on it.
Yes.
Which means they made a head specifically to match him smiling at the end of that scene.
Yep.
Which is feels like a waste of money to me.
Right. Why not just have him go back to like neutral face?
Yeah, and it's like it doesn't even look. It looks like Jack Nicholson in
does.
Joker makeup.
And it does. You're right.
The final sequence is awesome. There's barely any dialogue in the last half an hour up to the end.
Yeah, it's essentially her talking to the cat.
Yeah, even there, it's like that doesn't even come until the only you get a little bit of dialogue when she tries to, for some reason, stop. Is she trying to stop the self-destruction program?
Yes.
Why is she trying to stop it? I can't.
That's another great question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like at one point I had an idea of why.
Because this time I thought it was that she couldn't get to the ship because the alien was like blocking
I
her
think
path.
that's it.
Is that it? Okay.
I think it's that she thinks she knows where it is and that she can't get past it.
Yeah.
And so she's like, I have to stop the self-destruct because otherwise I can't get to the ship. I'm going to just die here if I don't.
And it's that final sequence is, I mean, just her walking through the hallways with those lights going and the fog
the
and the
flickering
fire.
lights and like the kind of ambient sound.
It does. You mentioned it that before we started that this is kind of like a spacefaring haunted house.
Yeah.
And that scene in particular feels like you're walking through like a haunted house.
Yes.
Like
you've gone to Spooky World.
Yes,
or
exactly.
something.
Yeah, where it's just like strobe lights, gas effects, lights going all of thing.
Yeah, someone's gonna pop out of the dark at you.
Yeah, but it's really effective, and I mean they build to a certain fever pitch at the end where it's just that's the thing I was really taken aback by watching this time is again I've seen this movie 20 times, and I was so into it at like the opening egg sequence. I was into that. I knew what was coming, and I'm just like focused totally, like tense.
Yep.
It just works so well. It still works well.
Yeah, I feel like my notes for this movie were a little thin, and I think it was much more because I kept just getting caught up watching the movie, and I forgot I was supposed to be like dissecting things for conversation.
Yeah, and it also it's a really timeless movie.
Yeah,
I think it ages incredibly well.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because there's nothing in it that belies the era that it was made, really.
Yeah,
and most of the special effects look great still.
Yeah.
There's a couple like matte shots and stuff that are a little iffy, but it's not enough to really date it that much.
Yeah, I think the only thing that dates it a little bit is the size of the computer monitors.
Yes.
That they're so small.
But honestly, even that though, the ship, it fits the tone of the ship.
Right.
It doesn't, when you see that they have shitty VHS cameras or video cameras, it doesn't feel like, oh, this movie was made in 1979. It feels like, well, yeah, that's what they would have.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm not. I think it's one of the only things that comes close to dating it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bother me. It's like you're saying. It makes sense within the context of the rest of what you're seeing.
Yeah, and I noticed a bit more because I never felt like this movie had. Ridley Scott has especially in the 80s, Ridley and his brother Tony developed a very identifiable style. Mm-hmm. Lots of smoke. Mm-hmm. Lots of lights through slatted windows and stuff like that. And it turned into like people took it and started making music videos with that kind of style. Like it has a very specific era feel to it. This doesn't have it. Like there's bits of it. Like I caught bits of it towards the end when she's going through the hallways and stuff. But even like the filmmaking style doesn't feel dated.
Yeah.
What did he do? Is Blade Runner right after this? I can't remember if Blade Runner is before or after Legend.
Oh, I have no idea.
But yeah, I could talk about him all day. He's fantastic. Yeah, how do you feel about the final sequence on the shuttle?
escape shuttle? I fucking love it.
Yeah.
It's so good because you do have a moment. I mean, you can tell that she hasn't just gotten away because they would have just had her get in like a pilot seat and fly away.
Right,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, so you know there's a little more, there's something else coming.
I always wonder if the size of the explosion is supposed to be a bit of a fake out, where it's like this thing looks like a star going supernova, so obviously that must be it.
Right, maybe, yeah. Yeah, and I always think that there's going to be a moment, like, I used to, when my suspicion would have been that you're going to realize it's attached itself to the outside of the ship.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Or something like that. But the way it reveals itself is so good.
Yeah.
And just the whole, like, her kind of having the moment where she's kind of cradling the cat and she puts him in the cryo tube and she's sort of she's coming down from this crazy experience.
Yeah.
And to have the xenomorph still be there and have her panic but avoid it, like it's almost like it's going into a hibernation moment.
Yeah.
Which
But,
I think is really interesting, that like why it doesn't attack her right off the bat is really interesting.
The thing I love about that, the way that I was reading that was, it feels very much like the way a cornered animal or like an insect or something would act, where it's like, let's say you've got like a snake in your bookcase or something, as they tend to be.
Yes.
I feel like the way that animal is going to react isn't blah, blah, blah. You know,
Right.
it's like it's going to coil up.
Right.
It's going
a
to find a
defensive position.
Yeah. Or like, a spider or something. Or
Yeah.
That's why I hate when
Spiders?
Well, yes. But that's why I hate the way Hollywood... I sound like I'm railing against the system here. I hate the way Hollywood... makes like animals and insects and stuff act with when they do them CGI, because they always make them act like a person would act and not like an animal would act.
Right, or how a person might expect them to act. Yeah,
9 times out of 10, animals stay very still.
Right.
But
Right.
they always in movies have them do stupid.
Or like up in your face threatening you rather than
like fucking giant. If you saw a giant centipede on the ground, it's not gonna like slither over and like come up and like look you in the eye.
Right. It's not going to climb your pant leg and then up your body. And
Well,
then,
it might
like,
do that, but it's not gonna like talk to you.
Right.
And they always make these things look like they're
But
about
it's more
to talk
likely.
to you.
But it's more likely to run away from you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why I really like that bit at the end, because the alien does have that kind of sense of the animal who is trying to hide.
Right.
Yeah, and it's just so different. Like, it's different than it just going like blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
It does do that eventually, but
I mean, yeah, but it's because she
right, just spraying it with a bunch of gas.
spraying it with a bunch of gas. But yeah, I love that the final way she defeats it is by being careful and patient and thoughtful and not just lashing out and hitting it with some stuff. It's not like all of a sudden she's like, I found my space gun, now I'm going to shoot you. You know, like she still has to be resourceful the way she's been the whole movie. She has to look at her environment around herself and say, what the fuck am I going to do? And then she figures it out, which I think is so much more rewarding than just she beat it to the shuttle and then she blasted off and blew it up.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much more rewarding that she had this kind of final confrontation with what Ash referred to as this perfect organism.
Yeah.
And she still won. She still came out on top.
Yeah, and this, I hate to keep sounding like an old man here, but the way that they made these movies just feels so much more inventive.
Back in Clay's day.
Yeah, back in my day, 6 years before I was born. It feels so much more inventive the way that they fabricate this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, because everything's CGI now. Everything kind of looks the same.
Yep.
Whereas in this movie, you've got alien eggs that you open them up and there's like, they're lined with like pig intestines and shit to make them,
Right.
Or like the inside of the face hugger, I think, was made out of like
so gross.
sheep kidney and oysters or something. And what's the other one? Oh, even at the end, the when the alien gets blasted by the rocket,
Yep.
they did that by. It looks like it doesn't look like any rocket blast you've ever seen in a movie because it's not
right.
like an optical effect.
Yeah.
It's really bright light and water that they're spraying down at the camera, and it looks like a rocket blast. You put a noise behind it, it looks awesome. It sounds great. But it's a very inventive, much cheaper way of doing this kind of stuff that I feel like is, I don't know. Everything looks the same now. Prosthetics look so fake. I don't know. It's got to have something to do with the fact that these cameras are so intense that they pick up every imperfection or something. But like,
do you think also with the CG, it's sort of like I'm ignorant of this entirely, so maybe you'll be like, no, Amanda, that's dumb. But it's kind of the same couple groups or companies or groups of people doing a lot of the work.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'm thinking of like in the sense of like when you're in a relatively small industry where there's only a certain percentage of people kind of at the height of their career, they've all probably like learned from the same people or worked with one another, or like I used to work at this company and now I work at this one and this is just how I learned how to do things. Yeah. And so you start to experience this flattening of style because everyone is pulling literally from the same lessons.
Yeah, I think that definitely happens in concept design. And I think that's part of why, like I was saying earlier, why a lot of the designs nothing is really feels that original. Right. Because like a lot of the people are going to the same schools and learning the same way of doing this sort of concept design, and those are the people who are getting jobs, which is great, whatever. Right. But you know, and I think CGI is, I think there's so many places that do it now that it's a little bit harder to find that. But I do remember a period in like the mid 2000s where I could actually spot an Industrial Light and Magic CGI shot.
Oh, wow.
Because there was just something to the way that they did their rendering where I'm like, that's an ILM shot. And
Jesus.
Because, you know, I had a really active social life at the time.
A busy man.
Yeah. But yeah, there's just something about these movies where things are more physical and feel more handcrafted. Yeah. And have some weight to them. Yeah. That really goes such a long way. Yeah. And it doesn't happen as much as it used to, which is a shame. But the music in this movie was done by Jerry Goldsmith, a very famous composer. The interesting parallel with him is this came out the same year as Star Trek The Motion Picture, the first Star Trek movie, which he also did the music for. Oh. And this movie, especially the end sequence, there is no music in that sequence. Yeah. Like, it is just Ripley and the noise of the ship and the countdown. Yep. Whereas in Star Trek, everything they do has like the John Williams type bombast behind it, you know, as Spock is floating into the giant space butthole. It's like bum 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 bum. Like there's none of that music in this where she's. It makes sense if you've seen the movie. Sure. In this, like, there's no, when she's running down the hallway, it's not like dun 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 dun.
No,
dun,
it's
dun.
just like alarms blaring and steam coming out of pipes and her panting.
Yeah, the movie it lets you just do the work for yourself, basically. Yeah. And the music is so good, but it is so sparse. And I think that's why I've never really thought about the music from Alien.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not really. Because I was kind of had my ear open for it this time, and I was kind of surprised how John Williamsy it sounded in parts. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's creepier.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it sounds like Jerry Goldsmith because it's Jerry Goldsmith music, but it was more traditional than I remembered it being. But
it's just applied only in very specific moments.
Yeah, there's a lot less of it.
Yeah, which is why I think it works so well. Yeah, is because it might sound sort of more traditional than you'd expect from this movie, but you're only hearing it in these really specific scenes where it's clearly intentional. And so I think it doesn't outstay its welcome.
Yeah. It is really interesting to think about this and Star Trek coming out in the same year because they're both
fascinating.
They're both kind of reactions to Star Wars, And they both go in very interestingly different directions.
Yeah, they are kind of diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Star Trek ends up skewing a lot more towards 2001.
Uh-huh.
And Alien takes some things from Star Wars and just jacks it up to 11.
Yeah.
There's another movie that I don't know if anyone involved has directly cited as an influence, but there's a Mario Bava movie called Planet of the Vampires.
Oh boy.
Which has almost the same plot as this.
Wow.
I mean, it's not really that, all things considered, this is not a groundbreaking plot.
No.
But if you watch Planet of the Vampires, you're thinking about Alien for a lot of it.
I have to see this movie now.
It's awesome. It is. It's like it's very much like a campy sci-fi movie, but it's shot by Mario Bava, so it's like the best looking one you've ever
Sounds
seen.
Amazing.
And it involves,
A planet of vampires.
Yeah, astronaut vampires, basically.
I love it. I need to see it.
This is number 5 on our list.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that placement?
I feel pretty good about it. I might knock it a little closer to 1.
Yeah,
because I think it's genuinely scary.
Yeah, I hate to be that guy, but like, number 5 is Alien. Number 4 is Us. Number 3 is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Number 2 is Get Out, and number 1 is Psycho. If you're just basing it on those 5, I'm probably pushing this to number 2.
Sure.
Because I mean, not that those other movies aren't great, but like, I don't know. Alien is just like a foundational text.
Yes.
I mean,
especially
so is
since wait a minute, what was number 4?
Us.
Us was, I mean,
It was fine.
It was fine.
Yeah.
It's good. I don't think it's top 5.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah. But I think you and I would make a very different list than this list.
Yeah, it's just
it should be in the top 5. Let me put it that way.
Sure.
It should be in the top 5.
This is such a weird top 10.
Yes. This is a very strange list.
Fucking Quiet Place and The Invisible Man. Night of the Hunter. That's a great movie, but I don't even know if that deserves to be on this list at all.
That's a conversation for our episode about Night of the Hunter, Clay.
Yes, which will which I think will guest host feature my cousin Danny.
Word salad.
Yes.
Now, Clay.
Who is starting a podcast and website all about film noir.
Oh, cool.
So I asked him if he wanted to come on and talk about Night of the Hunter, and he's like, yeah, absolutely. So
nice.
Give him a little bump, hopefully.
Give us a little bump.
Yeah. But I think that's it. Is that it for Alien?
Probably not, but
yeah.
I feel like we've got to pick a spot.
The one thing I did want to bring up, because you know, now that I am old, I pick up on scarier real world things. Is I was thinking the scariest thing in this movie is watching Tom Skerritt have to navigate that tube with a flamethrower, like a real flamethrower.
Yes, unable to fully stand up and walk, carrying essentially an iPad in the other hand, and having to like lurch his way through this like 3 foot high.
Yes, incredibly dangerous.
Yes.
Anyway, I hit the randomizer button. Beep boop boop beep beep boop boop beep boop. And next up, we will be doing number 38, The Birds.
The Birds.
Yes, which I'm excited for. I haven't seen that movie. I think I watched that movie in high school.
Yeah, I feel like I watched it in college.
25 years ago, because I can say that now.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway.
You're an old man.
Yes. When you think about what 15 years ago was, add 10 more years, and that's the thing, is you get to the point where it's like, oh, 15 years ago, that was like 1999. It's like, no, it was not.
I'm not at that point yet, but I'm catching
You'll
up.
get there.
I'll get there. We'll all get there. We'll just get there at different times.
Yep. Anyway, now that
like
we're all
a xenomorph.
Yeah.
Moving through the air vents.
Thank you guys.
Chasing you down.
Thank you guys for listening. If you want to help support the show, head over to patreon.com/thepensky-file. Sign up for our Patreon, where you can follow Amanda and I as we go down the rabbit hole of video nasties this year. June we covered The Burning, and in July we will be doing. That is a great question, Clay. What are we doing in July?
What are we doing in July, Clay?
We are doing something great. Something really great. Oh, boy.
He had it.
I'm sorry,
He
guys.
lost it.
We are Bay of Blood.
Hey!
Mario Bava, Bay of Blood. So, yeah, and I'm thinking we got Bay of Blood. We just did The Burning.
Yes.
I kind of feel like maybe I have the next wild card pick. I'm kind of thinking maybe we might do Sleepaway Camp.
Ooh.
Just to keep on the lake-based summer movie.
Yeah.
So I got to kick that around a bit. There's so many that I want to get. I really want you to see The Hunger.
Oh.
Because I think it might be your new favorite movie.
Oh.
It's. I brought this up briefly a couple episodes ago. It's David Bowie, Susan Sarandon, and Catherine Deneuve in a movie about essentially bisexual vampires shot by Tony Scott. So
Look, I'm feeling very attacked right now.
I'm doing you a favor in telling you about this movie. Anyway, you're gonna love it.
Feeling personally targeted.
So there's just so many things to cover. But when else are we gonna do Sleepaway Camp? But we'll let you know at the end of next episode because we are at that time again. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Clay.
And we'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.